Every year, in the dead of the darkest winter, a foul chill blows through the air. A bitter wind of betrayal, vengeance, and unreciprocated love. Each year a being of iced veins returns to haunt the people of Terraria. One whose heart was long ago frozen solid, so that they may only exist within the frigid wastes. A queen once part of an all-powerful family, but now reduced to inflicting her own pain on as many as she can. However, in the deepest parts of the coldest winters, she is not the only thing there is to fear. There was one who would at first try to steal away the holiday for themselves, but as they become more jaded, this devious creature would create an army in their efforts to destroy the very personification of the season he hated so much. Gods had begun. Humanity had all players deep and challenging, with different is less likely to get me horribly Long ago, in a kingdom beset by snow and ice, there lived a princess, who dreamt of seeing the world beyond her castle walls. For her own good though, her parents isolated her in the safety of their palace. The kingdom was small, its resources limited, but the king and queen ensured she was given everything she desired. Everything, it transpired, other than companionship. With her parents constantly on the business of monarchy, ensuring their small corner of Terraria would not completely freeze over, the princess was alone, bar the servants who dared not speak directly to royalty. As she grew older, her heart hardened. She came to believe that she didn't need anyone, that she was better off alone. She did, however, still greatly desire to venture out and see what lay beyond the blinding white snow. At last, after years of entrapment, she could not take the isolation any longer, and so, one evening, once the servants had retired, secretly ventured out. For all the time she had watched it fall, melt away and fall again, she had never actually touched snow. Its sharp, stinging chill was unexpected, but not wholly unpleasant. It was a new experience of such she had desired for so long, and only spurred her to move further into the encroaching night. As she struggled through the deepening drifts, the evergreens loomed over her, seeming to almost watch her. It was like there was movement among their needle-like throngs. But the princess felt no fear at the darting shadows. She had, though, begun to feel the cold creep into her bones, and suddenly she realized that she had ventured too far away from the palace, and no longer knew her way back. Panicking, she ran further into the wood, searching for lights, shelter, anything that could save her, but before long she felt the energy drain from her body, and a soft chill embraced her as she collapsed into the snow. With faltering awareness, she felt presences around her, eyes in the dark, but soon unconsciousness took her, and all was a dream. The next thing she knew was burning warmth and distraught voices, those of her parents. Somehow she had made it back to the palace, and was found in the courtyard half frozen. Her parents decided that it had been wrong of them to leave her alone, and ordered one of the servant lads to remain with her during her recovery, if for no other reason than to make sure she remained indoors. This would not stop her though, for she knew she had not made it home by herself, and no one could have found her. No, she needed to return to the forest, to find what had saved her. It was true she needed to recover though. Even sheer determination was not enough to overcome hypothermia and frostbite. For the time being, she was forced to spend time with the lad, a jarring experience after so long alone, and his voice greatly irritated her. His common mannerisms an affront to her more refined demeanour, and yet on the occasion he was called away for the day, his absence did not go unnoticed. A few weeks after her ordeal, the servant lad was once more called away, and the princess saw her opportunity. She ventured out into the snow once more, making sure to track her path, and taking a thick overcoat to stave off the cold. But this time the cold did not bother her, and it actually felt much more natural than the oddly uncomfortable heat of the palace. Some time into trekking through the snow, she again became aware of darting shadows and moving shapes. But this time the cold did not take her, and she was confronted by glowing red eyes high in the trees, and a horned being that towered over her. In her time alone, the princess had read many books, and knew the legends of enchanted forests, and the creatures that dwelt within. Elves, wisps. But this was different. This was a Krampus, the horned devil of the woods. Punisher of those who had wronged, but it had saved the princess, seeing that she had never wronged, imbuing her with a shard of the forest's power so that she could withstand the cold. The Krampus was displeased with her encroaching on the forest a second time, but once more took pity on the young woman, warning her to leave and never return, for she was pure and not of his domain. Her questions answered, the princess returned to the palace, anticipating her meeting with the servant lad more eagerly than she had expected. In time, the two grew close, and on the day the king passed away, he was there for the princess, and slowly she felt her heart began to soften, but only for him. Years passed and the queen was beginning to fall into ill health. Soon the princess would be coronated, but she cared not for tradition, wanting the servant lad to be her king, but upon professing her love for him, he did not return it. She was royalty, and he admitted that he had always been there because it had simply been his duty, nothing more. The princess, devastated, locked herself away, feeling that no one could be trusted, knowing that there was only one who had ever done anything truly for her, her saviour all those years ago, the Krampus. In her rage and depression, something had begun to awaken her, the power of the forest. It froze her heart, tinted her skin an icy blue, and she knew she no longer belonged in the human world. With no one able to stop her, she travelled back to the enchanted forest, seeking out the Krampus, who immediately saw that something had changed in her. Bowing before him, she would declare furiously, "I have been wronged." In shock about her daughter leaving, the Queen of the Frozen Lands would soon be put to rest next to her late husband, and the kingdom would be left without an heir. A short time of democratically elected leaders would ensue, but eventually the populace would leave the cold wastes, leaving the palace and the ground surrounding it completely abandoned. They would not remain this way, however, and after centuries of neglect, the princess would return, having grown in the power of the forest, and becoming the being of wrath she had desired to be. Still seething with the pain she had felt so long ago, and seeing a great opportunity before her, she allowed the Krampus and his people into the kingdom, allowing them to spread their dark magic far and wide. Crowning herself as the rightful monarch of the kingdom, she declared that much may have changed in the world, but there were still those who needed to be punished. In her long seclusion in the forest though, she had convinced herself that everyone who had wronged in some way must be punished. She would declare war on the whole of Terraria, but to do so, she would need an army. Alongside the Krampuses, she would enlist the hulking enchanted trees of the forest, wild creatures of the mountains, and ice elementals that dwelled around the land, although they were still not enough, and the queen had seen the mechanical prowess of the world at large, so desired allies with comparable abilities. To this end she sought out the elven tinkerers to the north, a people of myth who were said to be capable of great creations. Naturally they resisted the queen, but readily bowed to her once she began systematically exterminating their populace. They would create devices for her, automatons and machines, but still even this was not enough. She knew the pain of betrayal and wanted to inflict such a pain on all of her victims. Then the most devious of all inspirations occurred to her. The people of Terraria would celebrate holidays of giving and companionship, so she would hijack this winter holiday and devastate them in the cruelest of ways. She ordered holiday-themed disguises and equipment so that her forces would go unnoticed until it was too late. There was one last thing though to complete her army. The queen desired a powerful weapon of terror that could lay waste to anything in its way. With the champion of Terraria having recently defeated the mechanical scourges, the elves ventured to the site of their destruction and collected materials to create a fearsome tank, including the skull of Skeletron Prime. This too was disguised as the deity the people of the world seemed to worship, a god named Santa Claus. Hidden as heralds of the holiday, the Ice Cream's army would venture forth into Terraria to lay waste to those she deemed as having done wrong, destroying their belief and resolve before descending herself to land the final blow. It wasn't long before word started to spread about her army, and some towns began preparing for an onslaught. Some even managed to destroy the army and rout the queen, but every year, when the frost began to creep, she would return with a fresh force to terrorize her enemies. Although she is undoubtedly strong and her army is mighty, more and more who fought her began to win, and eventually people became accustomed to her yearly attacks. Then again, with everyone so vigilant about the attack, the holiday that once took place in that time has been all but forgotten. So, in a way, each year the Ice Queen destroys people's belief in the holiday spirit. She is once more victorious, even if her forces are destroyed. One day she may see that not everyone is as bad as she thinks, that some people do care for each other, even though no one ever seemed to care for her. One day she may end her attacks entirely, but so long as her heart remains frozen, the terror will continue, and the winter holiday that was once so beloved will continue to be stolen from the people of Terraria. Of course, even without the queen, there are still those who would do their best to steal the holiday and cause as much mischief as they can while doing it. During her long seclusion within the Krampus' forest, a great many things happened to the princess who would one day become the Ice Queen. She mastered the ways of frost manipulation, learnt to command the armies of the forest, and found a form of immortality by allowing her heart to literally turn to ice. The greatest secret she kept, however, was that, in this time, she bore a child. It may be that her seething hatred was so great that a single body could not contain it. Thus another was created, but the true origins of the infant are likely much darker. Regardless, a baby was born, deformed, miscoloured, a child twisted by the pure malice it was born of. There was a name for such a hateful being, a name those of the forest reserved to one worthy of it. To them the child was a Grinch, an outcast. At first the princess looked upon the baby as a weapon that she would mould and wield against the people of Terraria, but as it grew and began to learn of its own nature, it became clear that this aberration was something the would-be Queen of Ice may not be able to control. She wished to terrorize the towns of Terraria, make them feel the pain she had suffered, but she could not even begin to predict how the child would turn out. It could assist her, or it could turn against her, threatening her plans and endangering all she had worked for. To the now heartless princess there was only one option. She would take the boy deep into the mountains, abandoning him there to freeze. Unbeknown to her though, he did not freeze. The blood he had inherited from his mother ensuring the cold meant nothing to him. For years the young Grinch would live in solitude among the mountains, catching and consuming wild animals with his bare hands to survive, all the time wondering why he had been left here all alone. In time he began to learn that a tolerance for cold was not the only thing he had inherited from his mother. He found that he was able to change the shape of snow, animate it to do as he desired. This made his hunt somewhat easier, as he set traps that would bury his prey under large snowdrifts. Having constructed a form of shelter from the remains of large animals and any twigs or logs he came across, the Grinch had, to some extent, managed to carve out a life in his desolate surroundings, lonely as it was. But that nagging question still remained inside of him. What was so wrong with him that he deserved to be taken out of the wilderness and simply left? In the end, the solitude and questions tormenting him became too much, at last driving him towards civilization. Coming across a bustling town, the Grinch was fearful of the amount of people, so he simply watched them to start with. They were nothing like he expected, and as he continued to observe them, he realised he had a deep longing for the companionship and kindness they seemed to share. Eventually it came to the winter holidays, the time for the giving of gifts, and the Grinch could wait no longer, and approached the town to join in with the festivities. As soon as the people saw his deformed features though, they believed him to be some sort of monster and tried to chase him out of town. At that point it became clear in the Grinch's mind that truly no one wanted him, that he must be a being so vile that he deserved all the torment he had received. Although even believing this, he still desired to take part in the holidays, but if no one was willing to share any gifts with him, he would have to take them. So he began conceiving of a plan to steal the holiday for himself. He would take their presents, their decorations, their food, and have it all to himself, because if there was one thing he had learnt growing up, it was that he alone could do anything. Planning for an entire year until the next holiday season came about, the Grinch put his plan into action, but it was hardly a well thought out plan, and almost immediately he was once again chased out of town. Again and again he tried, each time failing in some new and often spectacular way, until one day he decided it was enough. It was obvious he would never be included in the holiday, and he decided that if he could not be included, then no one would be. But unlike his mother, who decided to bring terror to her victims, the Grinch wished to bring total punishment. Punishment for rejecting him. Punishment for having a life he did not. He would destroy this holiday that people loved so much, and to do so he would seek out and kill what he believed to be the one everyone worshipped. The Winter God King, the one named Santa Claus. Over and over the Grinch would try to steal away the winter holiday from the people of Terraria, and every time he failed. Even when he did manage to take their presents and decorations, they would still come together, celebrating even when they had nothing. Slowly he came to learn that the festivities were not driven by material possessions, but by an idea. He realised that if he wanted to destroy the season, he would have to destroy the people's spirit. His own mother had done this for years with her unending attacks, but every time the celebrations continued. To truly put an end to the holiday, he would have to remove the symbol for it. The one they all seemed to worship at this time of year, the one they prayed to, made effigies of. He would have to kill the one known as Santa Claus. Despite their familiarity with him, apparently no one had ever actually met or even seen this Lord of Winter. Well, no one that was, other than the Ice Queen. During her campaign to raise an army, she had travelled to the cold lands far to the north, and enslaved a great number of the elven tinkerers, a people who once served Santa himself. While there, amongst the carnage she proceeded to cause, the Queen caught glimpse of an old man as he was ushered away to safety. On that day she could have easily ended his life, but deemed him ultimately unimportant to her plans. Her son, on the other hand, took a different view. The Grinch decided it was time that he reunited with his mother and take the knowledge she possessed, by force if he needed to. Her army was formidable, however, and he would need one of his own if he were to come to blows with her. To this end, deep within the icy waste he had grown up in, he began building a legion of snowmen, a legion he would bring to life with his inherited cryomancy. For years he would go on to drill his legion in combat, coming to think of them as a family, but it was no ordinary family, it was the Grinch's twisted idea of one. As part of their training, the living snowmen raided local towns, shaking down their occupants and taking clothes and weapons to furnish themselves with. At last, the time came when the Grinch would approach the Krampus's forest, home of his mother, with his new family at his back. But when he arrived, something most unexpected happened. The Ice Queen did not attack him, or even send him away, but seeing what he had made of himself, expressed pride in her son, and regretted ever leaving him. She gladly told him the location of the Elven lands, but insisted that he join her campaign instead, promising they could be a family once more. The Grinch had already found his family though, and a destiny he would achieve at all costs, but as he would soon come to learn, his ambitions would indeed cost him everything. Travelling to the northern lands, the Frost Legion laid waste to the elven towns, just as the Ice Queen had years before, and despite their best efforts, just like before, their targets slipped through their fingers. Santa had again escaped. Enraged by his legion's failure, he declared open war against Terraria, vowing to find the King of Winter, and finally put an end to his insipid holiday season. The Legion marched into towns and villages, roughing up locals for information and valuables, all the time growing ever more bloodthirsty, until it came to the point where they no longer desired to follow the wishes of their creator and master. On one fateful night, when members of the Legion returned from pillaging, the Grinch attempted to extract any information they had gained, but instead of telling him, they began beating him, and continued to do so until his body lay lifeless in the cold snow. The Legion were now free of the Grinch's control, and could do what they pleased, but all they desired was to harm and steal, which they continued to do for a very long time. They had no desire to destroy the festive season, or even punish the townsfolk. They merely wished to terrorize, simply because they could. Even so, during this time, Santa remained in hiding, unable to gift the world with the presents he and his elven tinkerers once made. That was until the Legion marched into the village built by the champion of Terraria. As with all others who faced the hero, the Legion at last fell, and Santa was able to emerge from exile, taking up residence in the safety of the champion's town. As would soon be discovered though, the terror of the Legion was not over, for before his demise the Grinch had taught them how to self-replicate, and even now, out in the vast cold wastes, the Legion rises once more. As for the Grinch, his story was not over either, for upon seeing the uncontrolled rampaging Legion, the Ice Queen quickly travelled to her son's home. Upon finding his corpse, she shed a single icy tear for him. Utilising the power of the forest, she did for him as her Krampus had once done for her. She granted life to him, but in an effort to undo all the years of loneliness he had felt in the wastes, she reverted his body and mind to that of a child, so that she may raise him as she should have to begin with. In one last act to try and protect her son, she bound his essence to a relic of her old life, a single ornate whistle, so that if she ever lost him again, all she need do was blow the whistle and he would return. It must be a sort of cosmic irony then, that this very whistle would be stolen away from her during her attacks on the towns of Terraria, ensuring that she would never see her son again. As it is though, it may be that the Grinch would become a better person than he ever could have been as he grows up alongside the champion of Terraria, or it could be that wickedness and cruelty are ingrained into his very being. For now, the creature once abandoned and forgotten about has a new start in life, and may end up becoming whatever he wishes to be it for better or worse. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, then please consider liking the video, subscribing and sharing it with your friends. If you want to support the channel even more, then head over to Patreon, become a channel member or buy some merch. Links are all down in the description. I hope you all have a great day and I'll see you next time.